Good morning, and welcome to another Sunday Antisocial Hour with your boy, Gribbs, in which I answer all your questions and generally complain about the human condition. And currently, the human condition is cold. It's 31 degrees in here right now. Yesterday was the opening day of trout season, and last night it snowed. It snowed. So David, 35, 445, I know you're all talking about how I was complaining about mowing my lawn in the last one, and you were saying you were still shoveling snow on the lawn. Well, number one, it's not my fault you live in a Jack London novel. Number two, yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. Except I'm so lazy I've never actually shoveled snow in my entire life. But you get what I'm trying to say. Welcome to the Sunday Antisocial Hour. Do you notice anything different about me? Anything new? Little skip in my step? Anything? Well, this is the first Sunday Antisocial Hour in which I, Gribbs, have been mentioned on the Breyer Report. That's right, my name is now down in the list of YTPC members. And thank you, Breyer Report, for the link. Glad to be on there. And I feel that I have arrived. Fortunately, I'm smoking a cob. So, is there a site called Cobb Report? I'm going to go register that domain name right now. Smoking Captain Black Royal in my Missouri Meerschaum Devil Ants. And let's get right to your questions, shall we? Paulie's brother, John Galdieri from Jersey, says, whatever. He says, ask Gribbs, hashtag, that's how you get all your questions answered. I will answer any question at all, no matter how personal, how embarrassing, or how esoteric, and something I might not know anything about. I'm totally going to give you an answer. He asked, what is your fondest memory of opening day or fishing in general? Of course, he's talking about the opening day of trout season. And I've only ever been to one. If you like, I don't know, watching my videos, there's a video I just posted yesterday of my experience at yesterday's first opening day of the season, which is also called the first day of the season. The first opening initial inaugural day of this year's trout season. I was there. I was there at 7 in the morning, and it sucks. It was terrible. I don't know what I was expecting because everyone was telling me, no, it's terrible, don't go. It was like Black Friday for fishing. Speaking of black, that's how I like my coffee. It's delicious. And John, I have many fond memories of fishing, but I've been at this so little. So you know, I'm going to need more caffeine. I'm a very new fisherman. And so I have few memories. I started fishing in October 2nd of 2016. That was the day that Gribbly was born, as opposed to the old Defiant Pipes channel that no one ever cares about anymore. The Gribblarian concept began to come into existence in that time, and that was my first day fishing with my buddies Brad and Shane, and that was a good day. Didn't catch anything, didn't even get a bite, but it was a good day. And so I have that memory. That's nice. But back to opening season, because, you know, generally how the Antisocial Hour works is I ramble and then I answer your questions. Well, I'm going to ramble in the way of opening this question. The opening day of the season was very illuminating because being such a new fisherman, it's not often that I feel like I'm the most accomplished angler on the water. And those other people out there, I don't know what they think they were doing, but they weren't fishing. As I mentioned, my fly fishing guru, mentor, friend, he calls anyone that doesn't fly fish a worm drowner, meaning you put the worm on the hook and you fish it till nothing happens and it drowns. And man, now I understand, like, I never understood that bias. I was like, well, why you gotta be down on other people's fishing, like, techniques, you know? Now I get it. Like, there was this old guy sitting at, like, the primo fishing spot. Worm on a hook, hook in the water, pole sitting, like, in the crook of a tree, and he was just sitting there. And I watched him sit there for, like, 20 minutes, and I could see Like, I mean, the water is crystal clear. There's trout everywhere. It just got stocked. I mean, there's like giant trout just everywhere. And the hook, or the worm, like his fishing line, which was like, you know, mono as big as my pinky, went straight to a hook that was just sitting under a rock. And he was just sitting there like that was going to produce a fish. And I wanted to be like, hey, man, maybe you should recast that. Or like jig it or paw it or make it dance, like do the worm dance. I don't know, but I don't think like the worm under the rock trick is going to work on these fish. And even then, it's still okay. It's still like, well, yeah, so you don't know what you're doing. That's fine. It's a little annoying that you're in my fishing hole, not knowing what you're doing. But they trashed up the place. Like, I've never seen the place so trashed up. And this is a place where I fish all the time. Like, several times a week during the summer months, I am out at this place fishing. And it's a terrible place to fish. It's not a good fishery at all. But I go there because it's really close to my house. And it's super trashy right now. Like bait containers and cigarette butts and just unbelievable. And so I'm now starting to understand, like, I don't condone the bias, but I'm starting to understand, okay, maybe these folks aren't in it for the same reasons I'm in it, which is my polite way of saying, yeah, they're fucking worm drowners. I mean, they just have different levels of skill and motivation. That's the way to put it, because the whole point of me being in the woods all the time and fishing is to get rid of this sort of bias and ego, and they're worm drowners. I'm sorry. Next, I wanted to talk about, and I'm going to do a whole video on this. YouTube sucks, y'all. Like, the gun thing, I don't know if you followed, but YouTube, like, put the ixnay on certain types of videos on gun channels. They're not banning gun channels yet, but they have banned videos which involve the manufacture of guns and involve certain accessories. So they wrote their language and their policy very broadly so that manufacturer could mean, if you're paranoid and worried they're going to ban all gun channels, could mean putting a scope on a rifle. I don't think that's their intent yet. But I think that, you know, it's something out there, something to be a little concerned about, because it wasn't like this activity was illegal. Like, putting together, you know, a full auto, you know, like filing down the sear on your 1022 to make it into a full auto weapon, that's illegal. And that was already banned on YouTube. This is new stuff. This is not law, it's policy. And that's fine. It's their platform, you know. We have to play by their rules. But combined with what Scott said earlier this week, Scott at Aristocob, it doesn't bode well for this thing of ours. It doesn't bode well when YouTube increases their policy from just blanket, you know, we don't talk about illegal stuff here, we don't demonstrate illegal things, to we're going to pick and choose legal stuff that we think is cool or not. And it's one thing to just go ahead and have a policy against it and ban it, but what Bradley at Stuff and Things has been talking about is that's not how it works anymore. What they can do, which is just as effective, is to delete it from their algorithm, basically. So if your video has tobacco, or your video has guns, or your video has fishing, I recorded, like for that video yesterday, I recorded more than I included in the video. I mean, of course I always do, but I recorded myself actually killing these fish. And then I thought, you know, that's going to get a complaint from somebody on YouTube, which is fine. Complain about stuff. That's fine. Like, you know, argue. That's the whole point of doing this, is to have conversation, but YouTube's going to shut that down. YouTube's going to delete that video one day. Probably not now, but in a few years when it will not be cool to show something like that. But for me, like it was a big part of the experience. That's like, I'm not comfortable killing fish. I'm not comfortable killing anything. That's why I'm doing it, is I'm trying to figure out, like, should I be a vegetarian? If I'm that uncomfortable killing a trout on the side of a stream, I really shouldn't be comfortable going to Chick-fil-A, you know? So that's something I would love to talk to folks about. But then I was like, that's content that YouTube is not going to enjoy. I guess I won't make another video about that. I guess we'll just talk about it now. I'm not monetized. I'm not. You have to have 1,000 subscribers. I don't have them. Even when I get 1,000 subscribers, I don't think I'm gonna. I don't want to worry about that. That is not something I want in my head all the time. Like, oh, what am I gonna say that's gonna get this video demonetized? Like, not interested in doing that. Now, if I got 10,000 subscribers, I would have to say, yeah, you know, I'm missing out on some money here. But like, somebody said, I think it was PewDiePie that said, you know, at 1,000 subscribers, you're talking about like $4 a month. Like, not interested. Not interested in self-censorship for $4 a month. So, whatever, if I was at Brad's level or Match's level, you know, I would consider that. But I think it's time for those of us in the pipe community who ridiculously so are going to be marginalized by the way that YouTube is going to think about this. Should we switch platforms? Probably not. Norbo went over to Vimeo for a while and now he's back. So, I mean, I will be the first to admit I didn't really follow him to Vimeo to check out how it was going over there, but I assume if he came back here, it wasn't going great. Norbo, maybe you can enlighten us on what Vimeo is like. But I think, you know, does the YTPC continue on YouTube? I mean, obviously it would have to. It's the YouTube pipe community. But should we diversify our platform? That's just something I've been thinking about lately, included in the Sunday Antisocial. Jeep Guy has a bunch of very good binary questions this week. Canon or Nikon? Nikon. Chevy or Ford? I've only ever owned a Ford, so Chevy. Chicken or steak? Steak. Definitely steak. I love red meat. Love red meat. And if I could afford it and if I thought that it was the healthy thing to do, I would eat steak every night. Cats or dogs? This is a good one. Because my entire life, up until the past few years, I have considered myself a dog person. Like, hardcore, didn't like cats, did like dogs. I had a cat, and didn't, I still was like, I'm a dog person, but this cat's okay. That was kind of my opinion. However, a couple of things have changed. Number one, I biked 108 kilometers to my mom's house. Because I took up biking, more on that later, took up biking and decided that I would bike from my house to my mom's house, which is 108 kilometers away. I took up biking. She was so upset that I took up biking that I was just like, you know where I'm going to bike is my big ride this year? Your house. Coming to your house. That's right. But she thought I was going to get killed. She thought I was going to get hit by a car. She thought I was going to get mauled by a bear. She thought I was going to have a heart attack. And all of those things were, you know, they're somewhat legitimate, you know, there could be a legitimate element, especially getting hit by a car. There could be a legitimate element of fear there, but mostly it was just the family anxiety issues. And so anyway, I decided I would bike to her house. Well, her house is on top of a mountain. So it was going to be this long-ass ride with the coup de grace of having to bike up this like 30-degree incline. We call it moving van hill because when we moved into that house, the moving van couldn't get up the hill. Giant Mayflower truck couldn't get up the hill. So anyway, I bike 107.9 kilometers, right? And I'm biking up this just brutal ass hill. So anyone who knows that, okay, yeah, brutal. And I'm biking up this hill. And my mom's dog runs out and bites me in the leg while I'm on my bike. And that's when things started to shift for me. Someday I will record for you the dog gauntlet that I walk through every time I go to the bothy. I walk up the back alley here and the dogs just bark and bark and bark and bark and bark. And it's like this. It's just, I know it's the owners and not the dogs, but just shut up. Just shut. I do this all the time. Why are you still barking at me? What are you, like not as smart as a 3-year-old? Isn't that the dog level of intelligence is about a 3-year-old? Whatever. I don't know. Lastly, I will say, I've never had a cat owner come out into the woods and throw their cat in my fishing hole when I'm fishing. But it happens with dog owners all the time. Like, you'll just be standing there, peaceful day, glassy smooth water, 20-inch brown trout just getting ready to take your dry fly off the top, and then all of a sudden some yuppie comes down there with their fucking Great Pyrenees and they just jump right into the water and start splashing around, and there's not a fish for 5 miles anymore. And then, like, I actually had one guy tell me, "Oh, sorry, but we went on a run, I owe him this." I'm like, yeah, well, I don't owe him shit. It's the town where I live. It's like, do you really need to bring your dog everywhere? Like, does your dog need to go on a date with you when you go out to your local micro craft brewery? Like, do you really have to, like, I can't get in the brewery for the dogs. And not that I even drink beer. So I've got no motivation to go there. And then every time I do get roped into going in there, you can't walk for the dogs. So yes, at this point in my life, I'm a cat person. Laundry or dishes? Laundry. It might surprise you, but I don't dress well, and therefore I don't have a lot of emotional I mean, I have like a couple of nice outfits that I wear to work, like for weddings and such, where I feel kind of well dressed. I feel, dressed enough to go to a professional occasion. But other than that, laundry is just a chore, man. And having been in the woods so much these past couple of years, I go through so much laundry because I'm just constantly getting filthy in the woods. I don't like dishes either, but I can handle most dishes. It's just the laundry just piles up, and you got to do it. And then you've just got a pile of clean laundry. It's like it's always in a pile. Anyway, moving on. The last question that Jeep Guy asked is ninjas or pirates? Definitely pirates. Definitely pirates. Have you ever heard of a ninja smoking a pipe? Didn't think so. Robert Dixon says, anyone who says you have OCD is crazy. You have no symptoms. Oh, my friend. Oh, my friend. If you really had OCD, you would take all afternoon to tie a fly. Yeah, well. So here's the thing about that. Because apparently, as I said a couple of videos ago, I have become the YouTube poster boy for OCD now. So I better live up. I have what those of us in the OCD community call pure O, which means pure obsession, obsessive compulsive, whatever it means. It means that you have no outward compulsions. So you're not locking the door 5 times. You're not checking the stove 12 times. You're not, as Robert makes an example, you're not walking back and forth to the bothy because you didn't like step over the right route or whatever. What you're dealing with is excessive mentation. And if you talk to a psychologist, they say that the pure O label is actually a misnomer because you still have a compulsion. It's just mental. So it's like the obsession is the compulsion. So in my case, just to pull an example out, and as Derek mentioned in his podcast, which is a sound file that you can make available over the internet. I didn't know, but they also have a YouTube channel. Hey, we're talking. Go check it out. As he mentioned, what did he mention? What the hell? When I have no idea what I'm talking about. Right. Okay. So Derek mentioned I don't really talk about the things that actually bother me because that would give me what those of us in the community call a spike. When you engage with the things that bother you, even when you know it's total bullshit, they can still bother you because it triggers the pathways in the brain that get into the loop, right? So I don't talk about the stuff that actually really bothers me, but I can tell you that it's mostly like big existential questions that I can't stop thinking about. That's what bothers me at this point in my life. Now, when I was younger, like when I was a kid, I definitely had outward compulsions that would have raised alarm had my mother not also had OCD. OCD is hereditary. So I think that she was just appreciative. She was like, "Oh, you're very, very organized. Look at that. Good for you." I am noticing similar things in my son, and we're in talks. We're in negotiations with his pediatrician and his developmental pediatrician, and his orthopedic pediatrician and his physical therapist. Yeah, he has a lot of doctors. We're in talks to figure out what's normal, what's not normal. Keeping an eye on behaviors that could become problematic. Anyway, Robert, when I was a kid, I very much remember having ritualistic stuff, having to check things all the time, having to perform, like turn the light on and off in the moment, like before you pull the plunger on the shower, and there's like that moment before the shower starts. I would have a ritual that took place during that moment. Totally normal to me. I never knew that was weird until like I was an adult and someone told me about OCD, and I was like, huh. I actually remember I was over at a girlfriend's house when I was in like high school, and her parents were watching some special on OCD on Dateline or whatever, 60 Minutes or something like that. And I was like sitting there like, what do you mean that's OCD? That's normal. Everybody does that kind of stuff, right? Anyway, as an adult, I dropped all the outward compulsions, and all my compulsions are tick tock right in here. So, for example, I big existential questions like, no, we're just not going to go there. Robert, thank you for your concern, and thank you for allowing me to address this. I have had 2 shrinks tell me that I have OCD, and I am on meds. I'm prescribed meds for my OCD, and we all know that doctors never, ever, ever prescribe meds unless you really, really need them, right? So I definitely have OCD. So I just realized I left out a segment in my recording. I forgot to press the record button. So Kevin Schoen asks my thoughts on who killed Seth Rich. And that, Kevin, is indeed a 3-pipe problem. For those of you that don't know, Seth Rich was a DNC staffer that was murdered in 2016. And there's a lot of shadowy secrecy surrounding his death. The official story was that it was a botched robbery, but seeing as how his robbers shot him in the back and didn't take any of his valuables, that's pretty botched. I did a lot of reading on this, and I don't really think there's a lot of evidence for the most prolific conspiracy theories, which are, of course, that the Russians did it at the behest of the DNC or Hillary Clinton to cover up all the hacked email stuff. The idea that Seth Rich was actually Julian Assange's source for the WikiLeaks leaks. There doesn't seem to be a lot of actual evidence for that comes from an unbiased source. However, the family has shut down that line of investigation. Do we know the family's right? I don't know. But I think that the partisanship of conspiracy theories is something that just really drives me nuts about conspiracy theorists. It's that, oh, Hillary Clinton had the guy murdered. No, Donald Trump had the guy murdered. Like, if we're going to attribute to Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump the capacity to murder staffers to keep secrets from coming out, which, by the way, is definitely within their capacity, why think that it only applies to the other side? If people in power are this dark and this ruthless, why would people in your party be any less dark and ruthless? So I believe that when it comes to conspiracy theories, the idea that Hillary Clinton did this, or Donald Trump did this, or Vladimir Putin even did this, really those are all parts of a singular sort of amorphous evil. Talking, of course, about the reptilians. No, I'm saying that government governs, and the only way to govern is through the use of force. Government protects its own interests, it grows, and that is what we see throughout all of human history. And no government is, and I was going to say innocent. No government is above murdering a staffer on the street to keep secrets, right? That's any government in the world will do and has done that. Do I personally think Seth Rich was murdered by the Russians to keep Hillary Clinton's secrets? Probably not. I don't know. I don't see any real evidence that says that. But do I think that Hillary Clinton wouldn't order the murder of someone to keep her secrets? No, of course not. Of course not. She's government. She's the part of government. Donald Trump is the same way. Do I think that Vladimir Putin wouldn't murder an ex-spy that was living in the UK and the spy's daughter and all the first responders that showed up to help the spy? And obviously, people murder people. And so this is why we dismiss conspiracy theories at our own peril, is because, yeah, while the theory itself might be crazy, usually the underpinnings are rooted in cold, hard truth. So to answer the question, I have no idea who killed Seth Rich. And opinions online vary, obviously. I think that the story of like botched robbery, this was just some normal street thug in the high crime area of some DC suburb where the DNC staffers hang out. I don't buy that theory. But I could buy the theory that it was a serial killer. There's definitely theories that, this guy was killed by just a regular old, psychopathic serial killer that just likes to kill people. Yeah, I could buy that. Derek Tant, what are your top 5 favorite bourbons? Buffalo Trace. Knob Creek used to be my number 1. It used to be. And something happened. Something over time, my taste changed. But I think that Knob Creek changed. Booker's is good. Baker's is good. And honestly, I've lately developed a taste, and by lately I mean several months ago, because I haven't drunk any bourbon in a long time, for Wild Turkey Rare Breed. I think it's pretty good. Now, none of these are the super high-end stuff, but I can't afford the super high-end stuff. And yes, I'm sure it's better, but I don't want to know because I can't afford it. So I would definitely say that if someone said, hey, go buy yourself a nice bottle of bourbon for your birthday or whatever, I would go buy a bottle of Buffalo Trace. If someone said, go buy yourself a super expensive bottle of bourbon, I would go buy Booker's, because I don't know any better. Bourbons I don't like, Woodford Reserve is basically bourbon-flavored diesel fuel. I can't stand that stuff, and I don't know why it has such a following. I'm not so impressed with Bulleit. And between Jim Beam and Jack Daniels, I would take Jim Beam, but it doesn't really interest me. And I'm not convinced, and I'm sure someone out there could prove me wrong. Here's the conspiracy theory. Booker's, Knob Creek, Jim Beam, they're all the same stuff, just watered down to different levels. And that is, I mean, Knob Creek is part of Knob Creek and Booker's are part of the Jim Beam corporate ownership, right? So why wouldn't it be that way? So I don't know. Again, I can't, apparently now I'm too old to drink anything without getting a headache. So whatever bourbon doesn't give me a headache, which is not Elijah Craig. Elijah Craig always gives me a headache, even though I think it's the best value bourbon out there. Does that answer your question? David 35445 asks Gribbs, is the elk hair Caddyshack superior to the Mayfly merger? Well, David 35445, I haven't seen that episode of Captain Planet, but I tend to think, I have no idea what a Mayfly merger is. I'm sorry, I'm just going to go ahead and admit this. I mean, isn't a caddis technically a Mayfly? I don't know. All I know is I have now caught fish on an elk hair caddis, I think, in every month of the year. And it's such a versatile fly that I can't imagine being without it. And I don't feel the need to add any other flies to my tiny little fly box, any other dries. I have the Tenkara Adams dry that is like super effective for reasons I don't understand. And I have the elk hair caddis fly, which I like the fly in itself, but it floats so well that that's the fly I use in dry dropper combos. Are there other dry flies out there that could be good, better? Probably. But the EHC, the elk hair Caddyshack, is so simple to tie and relatively cheap. I would have to hear a pretty convincing argument why the Mayfly merger was any better. Finally, Piper at the Gates of Dusk, which is a really, that's quite a name, sir. That's a seriously good YouTube handle. I mean, that's kind of, it like engages memories or like associations of, you know, Piper as in bagpiper, but also Gates, enemy at the gates of Stalingrad. So it's like, what if bagpipers stormed Stalingrad smoking pipes? That's what your name makes me think of. Anyway, Piper at the Gates of Dusk asks, referring to my Easter Sunday antisocial video about the church sign that said, all God asks is our best. To get technical about it, God is a triplicity in some eyes, therefore sort of plural, hence ask may work. Piper at the Gates of Dusk has just triggered my OCD. But seriously, Piper at the Gates of Dusk, P-A-T-G-O-D, Pat God has just triggered, like, something. Okay, so here's what I think is when we start talking about the identity of God, shut up, right? Because you can't, if you are of the mind that there is a single source for all things in the universe and that there's some order and design to that source, yeah, we can't comprehend that. So I felt a little bit humbled that I had made fun of these folks for misspelling their damn church sign, and then all of a sudden, here's this way in which it could still be accurate. This is OCD. This is OCD, like, actually having to consider, like, because most people would be like, yeah, well, that's not what they were thinking. And Pat God even says, that, you know, that, I'm sure that's not what they were thinking. Yeah, but I think, given what I've learned of life, that whatever the source is, there's some sense of humor there, and it has a propensity for humiliation, meaning anytime you think you're better than someone else and you're understanding, it cuts you down a little bit. So I feel like I feel like the universe conspired, Pat God, through your comment to tell me to shut up. I am getting notifications of more comments on my videos as I make this video, but of course, YouTube actually doesn't take me to the comments. It takes me to the video where the comment is not. It takes me, like, the comments are supposed to be on the video, but then they're not actually there yet. They haven't shown up in the whatever. They're still in the point being, if you have asked an Ask Gribbs, hashtag Ask Gribbs question in the course of this video, I will get to it next week. Thank you so much for watching. I feel like we've run long here, so I'm going to go ahead and cut it off. Keep the ends out for the ties that bind.